Warlocks, I don't have much to say here, and this build video probably won't be too long because it's not complicated. The build is kind of what you get at face value, but what it offers is really strong, and it's just fun to use. Survivability, ad clear, single target damage, transcendent spam, super spam, and all you have to do is just shoot guns and throw abilities, which you get a lot of. It's literally that simple. Let's get into it. And some of my favorite tunes? Yeah, let's do some proper stuff. Here's a quick build. Timestamp is on screen if you're wanting to move past full ability descriptions and get into the gameplay tips. Phoenix Dive, Arcane Needle, Storm Grenade, Feed the Void, Bleak Watcher. Facet of Grace, Courage, Dawn, Dominance, and Awakening. This is your mod setup. Change leg mods to Surges for DPS. For the best version of this build, you're wanting an exotic class item with Spirit of Necrotic and Star Eaters. Otherwise, Necrotic grips can work, but try to make the class item version if you can. You're also wanting one of these guns. I do want to start this whole thing off by saying I'm focusing on one build here. There's a couple of other really fun Necrotic builds, main ones being Necrotic Synthos with Lightning Surge, and then Necrotic Claw with Incinerator Snap and Helion. So if you've got one of those rolls, it's definitely worth giving them a go. That out the way though, let's get into what makes up the build. Spirit of Necrotics is our first perk on the class item, and makes it so that on landing a melee hit, unpowered or powered, causes poison on a target. On killing a poison target, it will spread poison to anything nearby. Main difference between the class item and base version is that your poison will not scale up in damage, but rather stay at a flat base damage. Although, you can't really talk about Necrotics without Weapons of Sorrow, which for any content outside of DPS settings is 100% what you want here. In some way, all of these weapons are able to apply poison, but with Necrotics, the poison from these weapons can now spread, or is much easier to trigger. You're wanting either Necrochasm, where poison spreads on your Cursed Thrall explosion, Thorn in Osteostriga, which poison on landing hits, and Touch of Malice, which poisons on its blind shot, although the first three would definitely be my preference, as they play into our mod setup a bit more. For our second perk though, we're taking Spirit of the Star Eater, where I'm picking up an orb with a full super, you get bonus super damage. This stacks up to 6 times, with max stacks giving 70% bonus damage, and this is where a load of our burst damage is coming from. For the rest of the kits, Arcane Needle is our melee, which comes with 3 charges and unravels on hit. The 3 charges part is what's nice here. It gives a load of flexibility for spreading Necrotic poison and keeping up poison and unravel on bosses during damage phases. For your grenade, you're wanting Storm Grenade. Main reason this is here is that just by having an arc ability in the kit, we then get access to Amplified. We're not using this grenade a great deal though, as the first aspect you're picking up here is Bleak Watcher. It lets you consume your grenade and turn it into a stasis turret that shoots slowing projectiles and lasts for 25 seconds. And our second aspect, which seems to be a staple in every Prismatic Warlock build, is Feed the Void, and it's for good reason. Enhanced Devour on getting an ability kill, that full heals on a kill and gives better grenade energy returns, is both cooldown reduction and survivability all tied up in one package. For your class ability, it's really up to you, but Phoenix Dive is my personal favourite for on-demand kill. With your super, for boss damage, it's Nova Bomb, but for anything else, Song of Flame can also work here too, as Incinerator Snap during the super can apply Necrotic poison, as well as Song giving full ability refunds to every ability on it ending, meaning you can ability spam before and after using Song. But either one is good for anything outside of DPS. For fragments, there's 3 fixed fragments in Grace, Dominance and Courage, and 2 flex picks in Awakening and Dawn. Grace makes it so you get bonus Transcendence energy on kinetic weapon kills, and on super kills you get bonus Transcendence energy for you and nearby allies. As we're wanting a Weapon of Sorrow in the build, all of which are kinetic weapons, we get a load of Transcendence energy just from landing kills with those. But the poison that gets spread from our weapons counts as kinetic weapon damage, meaning if anything dies from them, we get the full effect of Grace. It makes getting Transcendence feel so easy in the build. Dominance gives our Arc Grenades jolts on hits, and our Void Grenades weaken. We're not using the Arc part here too much. Our Transcendent Grenade though for applying weaken is really nice for boss DPS. Encourage makes it so that enemies affected by a dark debuff take 10% increased damage from light abilities. Main reason this is here is to buff up Nova Bomb, but our Transcendent Grenade gets damage boosted here too, and so does Storm Grenade. For Flex Pick, the first is Awakening, which on landing 3 elemental kills will spawn in an elemental pickup. My favourite weapon to use in this setup is Necrochasm, and the Cursed Thrall explosions it triggers are arc damage, meaning that I can make Ionic Traces from my Kinetic. It still has good value without Necrochasm, but it's an added bonus for that combo. And lastly is Dawn, where powered melee hits give you Radiant, and kills give you and nearby allies Radiant. I mainly use this for anti-para, but for getting Radiant during DPS, it can be nice too, especially with how spammy your melee can be during Transcendence. Right, gameplay tips. And I've got to be honest, the gameplay loop of this build is really easy. Just use your melee to get poison on a target, and then chain that poison with your weapon Asara. One thing that's worth mentioning here is that poison made from your Arcane Needle doesn't count as melee damage, meaning it won't proc Devour. But there's still quite a few ways to get Devour from the build. Storm Grenade can be nice to throw out, and then once Devour's up, you can start turning those grenades into Bleak Watchers. But the Jolt from Storm Grenade can also get Devour. Arcane Needle kills, Unravel, and Tangles made from Strand debuffs can proc Devour, plus Shatter and Bleak Watcher damage can get Devour too. For your boss DPS combos, they're really simple as well. Make sure you have max stacks of Star Eaters, then before DPS starts, turn your grenade into a Bleak Watcher, Transcend, then Arcane Needle, Freezing Singularity, Nova Bomb, then do damage with a heavy like Bait and Switch Edge Transit, working in needles and grenades. Even unoptimized DPS still hits really high numbers, but if you fully spec into DPS with weapons, double specials, surges, and play with teammates who can drop a well, or even just give you Radiant, you start hitting around 5 million plus damage pretty consistently. For your weapons, outside of your weapon of Sorrow, I really like having an arc special, so I can get access to Amplified easily. My go-to is Indebted Kindness, but if you have another preference, go for it. In your heavy, you want to go for something that can do big burst damage like Edge Transit. The kits and your other guns already do everything else you'd need, so having big single target damage from your heavy is really nice. If you're doing DPS, something like Wither Horde and a fusion with Edge Transit can do some really high numbers. For your mod setup, on the helmet you want triple Kinetic Siphon, or double Kinetic Siphon and an Arc Siphon. These orbs are for Star Eaters, but there's some cool interactions here too, in that any kills you get with poison that was triggered by your weapons is going to proc Kinetic Siphon, which is why Thorn, Osteo and Necrochasm I recommend much more. When you start a poison chain, or poison cursed thrall chain, you literally just see at the bottom of the screen, Maiden Orb of Power, Maiden Orb of Power, making supers really easy to get, but also great for making orbs to buff up Star Eaters. On the arms you want double momentum transfer and a grenade kickstart. What makes momentum transfer nice here is that it has a 7-second cooldown on triggering, but as Bleak Watcher lasts for 25 seconds and counts as dealing grenade damage, over the turret's entire life it can give up to half a melee back. On the chest, you're going to want resist mods or reserve mods. On the legs, for DPS, go for triple surge mods matching your heavy, otherwise recuperation, invigoration, and stacks on stacks. And on the class item, you want one Reaper and double outreach. And your seasonal mods. So if I sound a bit different, the voice recording was done before the seasonal mods were released. As usual, if you're watching this and it's not episode Revenant, skip ahead. Although, if it is, the general theme of the season, at least the mods we're starting with, are grenade launchers and stasis, both of which this build can use. So, if you choose to use a GL, chuck on an Overload Grenade Launcher, then Rapid Impact, which causes faster reloads after dealing grenade launcher damage, then Concussive Reload 2, where using a grenade launcher to damage a boss, champion, or break a combatant's shield weakens them, and Kinetic Impact, which sounds like Kinetic Tremors but for heavy grenade launchers. Otherwise, for artifact mods with more neutral gameplay, this build can use quite a few good ones. First is Trace Evidence, where rapid precision hits against jolted or blinded targets will make Ionic Traces. Storm Grenade applies Jolt here, and you can also spec into a Volt Shot secondary too. Something like Prodigal Return or Undercurrent are both grenade launchers and Volt Shot weapons, meaning they can double dip into both seasonal artifact mods. Debilitating Wave, which causes a damaging wave matching your super, can work well here too. Brain Freeze is actually going to be really impactful in the build, as it causes frozen enemies to become surrounded by a chilling fog, which slows enemies that aren't already frozen. Nice thing about this is that it means we can throw out a Bleak Watcher and then get more access to shatter damage, giving that ability a more reliable way to get Devour from those shatter kills. And lastly, what I imagine will be the most impactful artifact with DPS is Conductive Cosmic Crystal, which causes your Arc and Void abilities and weapons with the Dark Ether Reaper origin traits to do bonus damage to targets that are affected by a stasis debuff. As we've got Bleak Watcher, which lasts for 25 seconds, we've basically just got another free debuff to use with Nova Bomb, as well as a free damage buff to our Transcendent Grenade. Right, back to where I left off, and that's the build. It's a really fun setup that requires pretty much no effort on your end to just be good, but I didn't want to drag this video out just because this build is super simple to use. That's about it from me though, see ya.